Hi, that's Kirk, the bariatric carnivore. Well, does science tell us how many times a day we should be eating? Well, I don't think so. Frankly, in the cult of carnivore, there's a bunch of people that run around that tell me that the only way that I can be healthy and optimally good is to eat OMAD, one meal a day. Well, that's not going to work for me. I've had bariatric surgery. I cannot pull a Sean Baker. I cannot sit down and eat 5 or 6 pounds of meat in any one sitting. I'm limited with the amount of stomach capacity that I have to maybe a pound or so of meat at any given time. So I try to be very careful about that, though, and I do try to limit my feeding window, and let me try to describe why. There's a principle that I think you can subscribe to, and that is intermittent fasting. Another way of saying that is to only eat for a certain period of time during the day, usually about 6 to 8 hours. And why would you want to just limit your feeding window to a relatively narrow range of time? Here's why. The science really does keep pointing to the fact that eating constantly, grazing, always having food in your system, actually works against you. It keeps your blood glucose high, or at least keeps it elevated most of the time. And when your blood glucose is high, your body is secreting insulin. And you never give your digestive system a rest. I think we are designed ancestrally to only eat maybe once or twice a day for relatively narrow periods of time. When you think about our ancestors, where what they would do is they would just sit in a cave until the point where they would start to get hangry enough to want to risk life and limb to kill some sort of mammal to eat. That was work. Frankly, there would be no doubt in my mind that they could probably kill something, eat enough that they wouldn't even worry about going out again for a couple more days. So narrow feeding windows make a lot of sense. That's what we seem to be designed for. Now, why would you care about having an elevated blood glucose? And frankly, look, here's the problem. When you have your blood glucose elevated because you're eating constantly, which you're doing a couple of different things. You're increasing the amount of inflammation, number one, in your arteries. Blood glucose has an inflammatory effect, tends to over time make your artery walls more brittle, and that's going to increase your blood pressure. Number two, as they become more brittle, they tend to crack at what they call the epithelium level, the level right next to where the blood is running through. And when that happens, the body repairs the cracks by putting plaques over it, which cholesterol and other things that they're working to heal it. The problem is if those plaques break, that gunk that pops out, it's almost like a pimple. When it pops out into the bloodstream, it immediately hardens, and then if it gets wedged into a key part of your heart, you have a heart attack. If it gets lodged in your brain, you have a stroke. So that can be a problem. So we don't want that to happen. One of the ways you do that is you can reduce the amount of inflammation in the body. The other part of your body that gets inflamed is your joints. And what's interesting to me, since eating a more low-carb diet, is the reduction in the amount of pain that I have in the joints of my body. I did not realize, matter of fact, how many different things hurt until you wake up one morning and nothing hurts. Then you become a lot more aware of the fact that, wait a second, I was in a lot of pain all the time. A friend of mine was asking for some help and advice on Facebook this week because she wanted to know, does anybody try this red light therapy stuff? Because she has so much constant joint pain. And part of that is just because I know her diet, and she eats standard low-fat diet, and she's eating constantly. She's eating a bunch of small meals throughout the day. As a result, she's staying constantly inflamed. What happens over time is it's almost like putting meat in a crock pot. You're not getting that big sizzly sear on it, but you are cooking the meat over time. And what happens is when you're inflamed, you're basically slow cooking the inside of your body. You're slowly but surely browning yourself, making yourself more brittle. And you're creating inflammation in the body, and That's what seems to be happening to folks that eat constantly. And it's really detrimental for people who have had bariatric surgery. That's just one of the real dangers that I run into. People, when they initially have bariatric surgery, they don't have any hunger signals. They get out of the habit of eating, for a while. But after a couple of years, they start grazing, and they start grazing a lot more because they start to get basically they want endorphin rushes. They want a dopamine hit that comes from eating something, and they start to confuse boredom with hunger, so they start grabbing maybe a handful of nuts or something like that. They can even be eating healthy things, quote unquote, but when you do that too much over time, slowly but surely you're going to start to gain weight again. How do you fight against it? Well, one of the cool things I have found by switching over to eating more carnivore is that this requires me to stop what I am doing and actually cook food. And frankly, if I am not willing to pull out a pan and crack some eggs and throw some meat in it, etc. like that, then I'm probably not hungry. Or I usually eat twice a day, so I'll eat 4 eggs and some meat sometime around 11 o'clock, and then a bigger dinner sometime around 5, 6-ish, somewhere around there. Occasionally I'll get feeling hungry during the afternoon, and what I will do is say, well, okay, I've got a can of sardines, and if you're hungry enough to eat a can of sardines, then you're probably hungry. I'm not doing this for an endorphin rush, and that's the hard part, to get yourself out of the habit of doing that. And it is not easy. I mean, if you are in a standard office, there's always some friendly person bringing donuts in. There's snack machines available 24/7. When you're driving to work, you're bombarded by Starbucks and all these places that sell sugary, quote unquote, coffee type mixtures. You're under constant attacks. And the only thing that you can do is just to satiate yourself with such high quality food that it actually would be painful to add anything additional to it. One of the advantages that you have when you eat a steak is, not only, do you know that you're ready to eat because, you've taken the time to actually prepare the food, but when you're full. And, there's a limit to how much steak you can eat. And when you've hit it, you just can't eat anymore. It's tough to do when it's with sugary snacks. So those are my favorite tips for how to, try to break yourself out of the grazing habit and to really try to limit and give you a reason why you should really want to try to limit your feeding window to just 6 to 8 hours or so a day. I think that's going to work out the best for your overall long-term health. And frankly, don't freak out if one day you've got things that happen with your family and you eat, oh my gosh, I normally eat 2 meals a day and I've eaten 3, maybe 4, and like 1 or 2 instances in any given month, who cares? It's not going to do that much damage. Don't get yourself that bent out of shape, but try not to get in the habit of doing it, because when you start to do it more than a couple of times a month, then you got a problem. And that's where you'll get into the same grazing habit that I found myself in, where you're trying to satisfy boredom with food. That's the danger. So this is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. Hey, do me a favor. Write down in the comments, how many times a day are you eating? How did you get there? So that other people may get a little encouragement too. For most people, it really is going to be difficult to get out of that habit of eating constantly. I mean, we've been told ever since the world went low fat back in the late 1970s, early 80s, that we need to eat 5 or 6 meals a day, because frankly, if you eat high carb food, it's not satisfying, and you're going to have a blood sugar crash, and you're going to get hungry every few hours. So they kind of normalized it, and that was not something we did back when I was growing up in the 70s. I mean, back then you ate, you came home from school and you could not eat until it was dinner time because you're going to spoil your supper. Well, that's gone. So how do you reclaim it? And, so let people know how you've reclaimed it if you have, or if it's something that you think that you ought to work for, say, hey, I'm not there yet, but, I'm getting better. So it gives people some encouragement. If you like this video, please hit the like and subscribe button. Let other people know that people are doing this, seeing this stuff, because the algorithm is working against us at YouTube land. And remember, in this fight for our health, we are all alone in this. And you're on your own. You're going to have to figure this out for yourself. But we can be all alone in this together. This is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore, trying to put out a couple messages each week. I will talk to you soon.